Dealing with a layoff can be really difficult, right? You never know how that could impact you and how long that layoff period could last. You might think it's to be a couple months, and before you it could stretch out to several months to a year. And this is someone who had a layoff for around a year. And let's listen to her example, the type of situation she was working in. While she didn't mind leaving the company, it kind of led to a much longer layoff than intended.
Backstory in my situation. I was working at a 12-person startup, 12-person full-time startup. There was a lot of interns, and we all know what that means when there's a lot of interns. They cannot pay for full-time employees. One of the major red flags that I've noticed was that when I joined the first 2 weeks, someone else in the same position as me decided to quit. So instead of being 3 people in my same position, there was only 2 people left. And I think what really stuck out to me was that the founder was just like, hey, instead of having 3 people, instead of replacing her, we're just gonna leave it at 2 people. You guys are gonna just work as a pair. You guys are gonna work in tandem. And I'm like, that's quite a lot of work to do, you know? I saw this employee turnover thing being a regular event. So within the, let's say, about 10 to 11 months that I was there, 8 people left. And that is quite a lot for a 12-person full-time startup. And what I mean by 8 people is that 8 full-time employees left. I'm not sure if they got let go, they all got let go, or they left the company, but it was just something that didn't feel right to me. I later found out that there was a lot of company politics going on in a 12-person startup. And that, once again, that's not including the interns. The interns, we had about 5. So very, very sketchy.
So the first thing is, working with startups comes with its own challenges, and there's so many red flags here, right? Firstly, if you're at a startup, you should expect some things that might not operate as major corporations would, where they just have big companies have sometimes an endless budget to hire new employees. She mentions they're very dependent on interns. There's a high rate of turnover. Many employees are leaving the company. She's talking about 8 people leaving, even though it's a small company. And the thing is, I've seen people leave due to no promotions or no progress or just unfair treatment. And if you just see trends like that or general unhappiness in the office, you should think why that is. And you should look out for these type of issues when it comes to jobs, because when it comes to things like this, you might be able to put up with it in the short term, but over time it could irritate you. You could be looking just to leave, to quiet quit, to understand why other employees are leaving and try to pick up on the social dynamics there, because there'll always be an underlying vibe at each company, but sometimes you can pick up on that sometimes in the interview before you even start working there. So that's quite good to read in between the lines of what's going on. So now we're going to learn about how many extra red flags there were that were showing that she really shouldn't have been working for this tech company.
By questioning our job titles was that we were doing stuff that was outside of our job description, outside of what we were promised. So for example, I was a CX lead and I was doing a lot of engineering work. I was doing integrations, doing APIs, writing code, everything like that. But I wasn't getting paid the same as an engineer. They didn't want to hire more people. The product wasn't stable.
There seems to be many things going wrong here. And in this case, and we're going to get to in a moment, she did decide essentially to quiet quit, right? Because if there's that many red flags, you might as well just put in a minimal effort until you find another job by obviously interviewing and reaching out to recruiters elsewhere, or you just kind of put in less effort until they fire you and like you collect a layoff package rather than kind of deliberately quitting out of some emotional outburst or some kind of sense of defiance, rebel. Really squeeze the company their way they're squeezing you by putting in less and less effort rather than just quitting out of the middle of nowhere, right? So she mentions doing extra work outside of their job description for no extra money, a lack of kind of core employees around software engineers, and she kind of had to step in and do some of that. And next up, we'll talk about the other social dynamics that really kind of pushed her out the company.
Specific people. One more thing I forgot to mention is that the founders like to hire a lot of their friends, so their friends were protected. They could not do anything wrong. Even if they did, it wasn't wrong in their eyes, so they were always protected. They were the gods and goddesses of the company. They were just good to go. Since I wasn't their friend, they found me organically through LinkedIn. It was just so easy for them to just point the blame towards me.
So now we're going to get into quiet quitting. And if you're in a situation where people are manufacturing narratives that are against you, you should just go for quiet quitting. Really, like I said, you've got to play this manipulative, passive aggressive way of dealing with things if you are kind of up for a layoff or things are heading that way.
Realize that I can never win at this workplace. That's when I started to quiet quit, because I knew that if I quit, I wouldn't get employment insurance. But if they let me go, I would get severance and employment insurance. That's the story of me getting let go. I don't regret it, the way I acted. I am so, so, so grateful for that experience, and I'm so grateful to be out of that workplace. Once again, my coworkers have let me know that it's not getting any better there.
So that's what I mean. She made the right decision there. She kind of opted for the quiet quit. She found a way to essentially leave the company on her terms, which is what you got to do in these type of situations. So let's learn about how the layoff anxiety was getting to her.
So as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of layoffs going on, and that really scares me because I don't want to be in a position where I'm always scared for my life every single day. I'm so lost because I know people who have been laid off in that whole wave of layoffs. They're scared to join a company again because they don't want to be in that same experience. Or I know people who have survived and they're just hating their lives right now because they're being overworked. The people who got laid off never got replaced, obviously. I'm just a little nervous about rejoining this rat race again. It's very scary. I also have trauma from my previous work experience where
So there's lots of things going on here, right? Many people are stressed about keeping their job, losing their job, finding their next job. This is the reality, particularly in the tech industry where she works. I think she worked around UX design and doing some coding and things like that. So the kind of key thing here is that it's important to save up a nest egg. You save up, firstly, your 6 to 12 month emergency fund and build a war chest, which would be a war chest of investments that you can live off for the long term. And that's why you've got to keep your cost of living low. I remember one comment I got from someone working in tech a few weeks ago, and I was talking about living more of a minimalist lifestyle, and he said, nah, if I'm making $200,000 as a software engineer, I want to live at that level. What's the point of living life at 50K if I'm making 200K? And the reason is because of this. You're going to see so much social instability that it's just unimaginable now. People are just seeing the beginning of it. You're just seeing the beginning of unstable job markets, inflation. You're just seeing the beginning of it. The way you should structure your life, and again, this is just my perspective, structure your life. If everything goes wrong, how could you survive? If you lose your job and there's like a major property issue you need to fix in your home, can you balance the two? If you lose your job and you have like 6 to 12 months unemployed, could you manage that easily? Do you have multiple income sources? Think about things like a survivalist. And that's not about being negative, it's about understanding the era you're in. So many people who are Gen Z and millennials, and even maybe some older generations, they just wish they could live this comfortable baby boomer life. Housing's affordable, relationships are functioning. We're living in the 1950s. This isn't the 1950s, this is 2024, right? You've seen overwhelming global coercive control over the last 4 years, crippling censorship, inflation that gets ignored and blamed for all the reasons apart from central banking, printing money. You've seen completely unprecedented things in your life. Basically, 2 major global events, 2008 global financial crisis, 2020, we know what happened with that fake lockdown situation, which we can't even discuss on this platform. So you know what it is, right? You know what it is. Stop living in the past, understand and live life for what it is now. So that's why it's important. She's making a good point about kind of being really thoughtful about her next move. Does she want to leave the industry? How does she want to structure her life? And there's many people in her situations considering that. So now we're going to move to a 6-month update. Where was she 6 months into a job search? Was it actually going well? Did she want to do something different? What did her 6 months outside of the corporate rat race, how did it impact the way she thought about her life and work in general?
Actually did have a lot of interviews because I was applying to everything and anything at the time. I'm like, I just want to get the fuck out of this startup. I want to get the fuck out of this job. I was applying to everything, was getting a lot of interviews. Obviously got rejected from all of them. But it's okay because I remember at the very end of the month, I had an interview with Microsoft, and this interview changed everything for me, okay? Obviously, I didn't get the job at Microsoft, but this lady who interviewed me was a career coach. She was just like, you can't just be applying to any job you see. You got to find a job that you really like. You got to really hone in on what you want. What do you want? And I'm like,
so, that's a good kind of little point she's making here. You're going for a job interview at Microsoft, where the recruiter was also a career coach, giving us some helpful tips. So a couple of things I'd say here. The first month or two after a layoff, you think it'd be super stressful, but a lot of the time it's good because you feel a natural weight lifted off of you, the daily pressure to perform well in your job, probably a job you didn't like, or you could sense you'd be leaving anyway due to a layoff or quiet quitting, right? So you take advantage of that good extra time. You might sleep well, spend extra time on your health. You like the feeling of a new start. Just enjoy that moment, right? Because there's, particularly for most people now, between being one job and the next and being under the pressure of the constant day-to-day grind, it's very rare for adults to have that kind of gap in their resume to kind of do that without being stressed about finding their next job. So I would say, from my career coach perspective, it depends what situation you're in. She's getting advice from this career coach at Microsoft that she shouldn't be applying for everything that wouldn't suit her current resume or current ability. I think there's truth to that. I think there's two aspects of looking at this. One thing is you're applying to what's available if you desperately do need a job. If you are unemployed, obviously cast a broader net to catch any fish or catch any opportunities, to use that metaphor. So that's a good approach to take. But also, what I would say is if you are part of a layoff and you're desperately looking for your next job, there's two ways of looking at this. Firstly, as I say, casting a broad net to catch what fish and opportunities you can, which I mean by applying for multitude of jobs, anything that could fit within your industry that you could potentially do. But then you especially focus on your narrow niche of what your specific expertise is and what you want to do, right? It depends what options are available to you because you are unemployed. So there is some context there, not just focusing on the specific niche that you're experienced in. And I think it's important to be open-minded. And when you speak with recruiters, something I always tell my clients is just tell the recruiters you're open-minded to all options out there. So they'll reach out to you about things that you never know. There could be things that might be outside of the scope of what you want to do. Like, for example, you're a credit trader and you just know that. Don't be so focused on only finding a credit trading job at an investment bank, hedge fund, or private equity firm. That's incredibly narrow. You need to be able to say that you're interested in trading equities, algorithmic trading, and just say, oh, I have a bit of experience on that. And when you have a broader scope, it gives you a bit more leverage for recruiters to call you about any opportunity that is available. Because if you're looking for a job, you don't want to be too narrow to the point you're giving up opportunities that could be open to you, that could be great for you, and you need to earn money, right? So in general, it's best to try to stick with a job 2 to 3 years. I skipped a bit, but this recruiter career coach at Microsoft was saying, oh, you got to stay at a job for at least 5 years. You've been job hopping a bit. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say 2 to 3 years is the maximum you need to do. What used to be 5 years at a company is a good sign of your loyalty to any company. 2 to 3 years is sufficient now, right? But I understand in her position, she's a bit more junior. She's been job hopping every 1 year or two, which isn't a great setup. So getting a bit more years of experience at one specific company is the best option for her.
Burnt out. This leads me into November where I start freaking out because 2023 is about to end, and once American Thanksgiving hits, a lot of these HRs, a lot of these companies are going to be basically tuned out until the next year. They're not going to really be hiring. They're not going to be really working. I kind of honed in on finding a job. You can even tell that I was posting less in November. I was just having a panic attack, feeling depressed. I'm like, what has my life come to? I shouldn't have quit, or I shouldn't have done XYZ at my previous company. But I can't think like that. I feel like what was meant to be. At the end of the day, I am not in a toxic work environment anymore, and I gotta remind myself about that. I know that my coworker who still works there is struggling, and a lot of the coworkers who were still there when I left have already left afterwards. And then December hits, still depressed, still unemployed, not getting many interviews.
It's so important when you are participating in a job search, because you do need your next job. You don't get lazy. You don't just be like, get caught up in this kind of longer term unemployment mindset with, I'll be fine, I'll find a job whenever I want to. I'm just enjoying my holidays and maybe going on a holiday trip or two with whoever I'm in a relationship with or family members. And she kind of over time developed this kind of lazy attitude, which I think is not a good option for her, essentially, right? So a couple of things, that's a key point of advice for you. If you've got a nest egg of savings, you don't want to run through all your savings with a kind of lazy, relaxed attitude. And particularly if you're more junior and you don't have that experience, you do need to get that experience, right? Whether it's, if you want to do self-employment, you can do that. You could become a self-employed freelance UX coder or UX expert, however you want to call it. But having long-term employment gaps in your younger years, in your early 20s or your mid-20s, is just not ideal. I would say try to avoid that. Even if you go to work for a company, it's not your favorite, but at least you're earning income and you're developing some sort of skills. Because if you have 1 year or 2 year gap in your 20s, it's kind of hard to explain that to a recruiter. You could maybe say you went on some traveling or you did some development, like a boot camp, but she's not even doing a coding boot camp or anything like that. So it's kind of starting to add up in quite a negative way for herself, right? So that's the thing with these quiet months, right? It's nothing wrong with relaxing and enjoying some time, but understanding your circumstances you're in is quite important, right? Another thing I'd say here is around the end of the year and around the year schedule when it comes to recruiting. So around, of course, like she's saying, October, November, December, the budgets are closing, recruiters are less active, people are spending time with family on Thanksgiving, going on holidays, maybe around Christmas time to spend time with their family. So that's true, that's a time of year you can relax or hibernate, right? If you're part of a layoff towards the end of the year, time like this year when the time the video's coming out, then you can maybe relax because the budgets will open up for new hiring January to October. Recruiters will be more active, particularly towards the start of the year. So that's when you can relax. And I think there's lots of mind games that get played within your head when you are thinking about your next job here, right? In terms of regrets can arise about your previous work roles. I remember keeping in touch with a few employees at companies I used to work at that I wasn't happy at and I wanted to move to a new role. And they would reach out to me and through their own admission, not me asking, they would say they were depressed. Someone who's doing my role at a major investment bank on the trading floor would message me that he's really depressed and he thought it'd be more excited to do my job because we used to work together and he was more junior than me and I moved to another part of the team, then left the company. And he was telling me he's really depressed. And it really made me think that when I was depressed doing the work, 1 or 2 employees made little comments that I should be more happy or enjoying the work. And I'm just like, the social dynamics in that team and a very toxic, verbally abusive manager, he will just make anyone's life terrible, regardless even if it's a high status, prestigious company. It does really drag people down. So it's important if you are playing mind games like, I wish I shouldn't have left that company, I should have left that company on better terms. Anytime you reach back to employees there, you'll get that reality check that, no, you did make the right decision to leave the company. It probably wasn't the best fit for you and people aren't happy being there. And then there's many instances here where she's going on holidays with her boyfriend or a family, which I don't think is the best use of time. As I say, it's best to be a bit more proactive with a job search. So let's listen to a quick clip here.
For a week and a half, had one really good lead, or so I thought, for a job. I actually did an interview in Italy and it went so well. It was with my potential manager who was so excited that I was in Italy because she did a term abroad in Italy. She was like, I will send you all of my recommendations, all the great foods, great spots, bars, everything. You should definitely check it out. The success of that interview allowed me to move on to the next step, which was doing an assignment for them. It was very long long assignment. It was quite hard, but I did it all in one afternoon. They were so impressed by it. They're like, okay, come into office. Mind you, their office is in New York. I don't live in New York. I lied that I lived in New York, and it was my fault, which was fine. Like, I don't mind going. My friend has a great place in the East Village, and I stayed with him. I even went to a rave, the Brooklyn Mirage. It was a great experience, even though I didn't get the job. You know, it happens. It just sucks that the reason why I didn't get the job was because I didn't have enough experience. I had 4 years of experience and they wanted 5. Understandable, but that is something that could have been an email than a meeting. Like, they could have known that from just looking at my resume, looking at my LinkedIn.
See, what's important here is, firstly, she's wasting a lot of time. Now, I don't know this person, I don't want to be too harsh, but she's starting to come across a bit immature, right? Firstly, when you're interviewing, particularly in the post-lockdown era, however we want to refer to it, post-2020 type of years, you could always organise the first interview via Zoom, which it looks like she did while she was on holiday in Italy. And part of that, it will save you time, right? It's like, there's no point getting all ready to buy a fancy suit or whatever and go to an office unless they really want to do the interview in person. Try to do your first few interviews on Zoom. Just ask the recruiter, can we do it via Zoom? That would be more convenient, because everyone adapted to using Zoom during the lockdown anyway. So hopefully it's not that much of an issue. And then you can meet in person for the second round interview. That way it saves you time. So if it's not a good fit, then you haven't wasted like half your day going to an office somewhere. And the other thing is, you're going to have so much of your time wasted in interviews or job applications that go nowhere. And you need to kind of save yourself as much time as possible and really run through those bad options. It's not the same as dating, but it's a bit like speed dating, where you're quickly getting through the bad options till you get to the good option, right? So really bear that in mind. So much of your time and energy will get wasted with dead end kind of leads. So she's gone through about 6 months of a layoff, had a bit of holiday, a bit of self-reflection. But where is she now, right? Where's she around the 10-month mark? Let's see what she says.
Talk about my undiagnosed depression and anxiety. Clearly, it's coming from the job search, my unemployment. But when I really think about it, I think this feeling all comes from comparing myself to other people, whether it be my peers or strangers. I compare a lot of aspects of my life to other people's life, all areas. Everything is on the table. I'll compare myself to the way someone looks versus my looks. Why can't I look like that? Or why can't I have that career success that they have? We're the same age, or they're younger than me. You get the gist of it. What helps me snap out of that mindset? Something that actually my friend Tiff asked me, do you even want that for yourself? Like, for example, my friends in banking, sometimes I compare myself to their career. I'm like, oh my God, they're moving up. They're making 6 figures. Tiff asked me one time, do you even want to be in banking?
Like, be fucking for real.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Or, with a mortgage. Do you even want a mortgage? Tech Sav 18? And I really...
So this is quite important, right? And there's a phrase I came up with for my own reference: run your own races, which basically means you're in your own race. You can't compete and compare your life to everyone around you. People have different starting blocks. Some people started with a lot of their parents' money. Some people, play this kind of slimy, greasy social status game at work where they focus on being popular than productive that you might not be comfortable playing. So you can't really compare yourself to other people. Lots of people, they might form a kind of friendly relationship with a manager where they spend time outside of work. I've seen a lot of that at like sales and trading and investment banking roles, where you have like people who are super close and like go on holidays together and things like that with co-workers, and they're basically best friends. So things like that, they really, things you can't really control. And then if you start comparing your job title to their job title, or the fact they're making 30% more than you are, when so much of your success, or the success in the corporate world, is kind of out of your control and depending on friendships and things like that you can't control. And that's why you need to run your own races. And that's what I mean about making sure your life purpose is clear, and ways you can do that is having a vision board. A vision board would have like images of what goals you want to achieve and making sure the work you're doing is aligning with that, whether it's investing or being in this. Maybe you want to work in New York, then obviously that might be on your vision board and you're happy to work at a company in New York, or work at a company that will give you the option, or the next step in your career will lead to you working in New York, just for example, or that you can work remotely and the job you're working at maybe is based in London where you don't want to work, but is developing the skills that allow you to maybe go and move to Thailand and live life on your own terms and work online, things like that. So this is what I mean about running your own races and having your own vision board, right? For example, for me, I've worked, like I say, at analyst level, at director level, at some of these major companies, and I could go and compare myself to people of similar age, similar type of background and things like that, and go, oh, this person, they got that job title, they're earning this much money, they've worked at these type of companies. But that's not necessarily what I want to do. What I'm doing right now is actually what I want to do, right? And I know over time the finances will come with that, right? I'm not playing this passive aggressive game. And particularly if you're dealing with a layoff or you're feeling unhappy with falling behind in life, what many people are, Gen Z and millennials, feeling like they're falling behind, can't afford property, not forming healthy relationships. Just understand you're in a dysfunctional society. There's no point playing the comparison game. And I'm sure you've all heard the meme phrase that has gone viral: comparison is the theft of joy. There's no point playing this comparison game. You're going to end up getting yourself more miserable. She wasn't happy in the tech role. There's no point comparing herself to people in banking who'd be just as stressed and doing jobs that they're not happy with. You know, comparing yourself with its careers, job titles, salaries, just avoid doing that. Focus on your goals. And like I say, a lot of things that will make you happy really have nothing to do with any of those things. It's just about pursuing your goals. And you know, I don't want to judge anyone, but I just want to say I think she's made some good decisions about not diving in recklessly to a stressful career that she might make her even more miserable, or diving into marriage, or getting a mortgage and kids. I'm not saying those are necessarily bad things, but these really are strategic long-term life decisions you need to think. If you get a mortgage and you have a hard time selling the property if you don't like living there, you might be stuck with a very high mortgage that traps you in a dead-end job that you need and that you're stressed about working, because if you lose the job, then you won't be able to pay off the property. If you end up in a marriage and it's not working out, it could be a costly divorce. If you have kids, then you're going to have kids for 18 years and you have to raise them unless you put them up for adoption. There's lots of challenges and time restrictions that come around that, where you've got to deal with that in terms of working and managing kids. So let's really think this through, right? You know, you've really got to plan your life carefully, particularly in these unstable times, and not just be so focused on, you know, just playing along with the standard life that you've been given. So let's focus about some of the benefits that do occur when you do have a layoff and you do have a bit more time to take care of your health and things like that. So there are some positive points to mention here.
So watch out, y'all. My backhand is crazy. I got the opportunity to rekindle my love for yoga. I can now do crow pose. And overall, my physical health got so much better. For example, my back teeth shifted because I was clenching my jaw so hard from the stress that I was in. It's insane how stress can manifest to the physical body as well. It's scary. Oh my God, one more thing that I want to mention during my unemployment journey that I'm very grateful for is how I get to do things when it's not busy out or when things are open. So for example, I can go to the doctor's office without having to worry about a job. The doctor's offices are always open from 9 to 5, 10 to 6 during those hours while people are working. And sometimes it's hard. Well, in my situation, it was hard for me to shift my calendar, my schedule, an hour. My founder, who I was working under, he didn't like it. He was like,
No, you can't go to the doctors. Like, what do you mean? We need you for that hour.
but now I can. So I ran through that doctor's office.
So there's a kind of few points here, right? You're spending time with her health, whether it's yoga, she's playing badminton. It might seem pretentious a bit, but, you know, there's so many, you know, people always say the phrase, health is wealth, but a lack of wealth can create health issues. And so many health issues people have come from neglecting their health to focus on their finances because they're put under unnecessary pressure at their job. And, you know, she's making some good points here about focusing on that, you know, and the way I'd see it, you know, if health is wealth, which is a common phrase, then maybe wealth is health. People have more money, they're less stressed, they can live life on their own terms and live life at a slower pace. Another important thing is about what I call the off-peak life, which is doing everything off-peak, going to the grocery store when it's not busy, going to the gym when it's not busy, which are things you can do when you have a layoff or you're working remotely, right? Or you're doing work from home, hybrid working, things like that. So it's quite important to be able to have that flexibility to live life on your own terms. And those are the type of small benefits you can get from a layoff that you wouldn't have typically when you're working a corporate office job where they want to control every aspect of your time.
But I'm going to put 10 months to just make it look clickbait. And it's clear that the economy is struggling right now. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's being laid off. Yes. And I know that there's always room for myself to improve, whether it be during the interview process, my resume, my skill sets, everything like that. I get it. But it's also like a very fiercely competitive market right now. I've seen many of my peers on LinkedIn who got laid off get hired again, but they're in roles that are a notch below from what they were previously. Don't get me wrong, that's absolutely fine, but it just shows the reality of how hard the job market is. Securing a job at the same or a level higher is so challenging right now.
So she's making a good point. Many people are downgrading their options, and I've seen that across finance and tech and other industries. People are taking what they can get, even if it's a step down, taking a pay cut. Some people are really stressed out and burnt out over the lockdown period that they don't mind taking a step back. It's like they can't handle the same stress they had before. Like I say, people are expected to do more work for the same amount of money, and they're getting pushed into basically quiet quitting, a layoff, or PIPs, performance improvement plans, and they leave. These companies are really being evil with pushing people out through underhanded techniques, right? And an important point here is obviously you've got to be actively searching for a job, but don't come across too desperate in job interviews, particularly if you have multiple months of unemployment. It's important to attract opportunities to you rather than chasing those opportunities. So that's kind of important to consider, because many people, they kind of come across desperate or depressed when they're doing tons of job interviews and it's not going anywhere. But you just got to keep pushing and keep a healthy local lifestyle while you're doing that, which it appears she's doing. So I thought that was an interesting example. I know parts of what she said might seem a bit immature or reckless. She went on several holidays with her family and her boyfriend. She focused on, other activities. I think a lot of these things you can kind of do for low cost, right? So say you're dealing with a layoff and it's leading to longer term layoff, you want to spend time with family, you can do that without going on holiday, right? You can do that with spending weekends with family members, and then spending your weekdays doing your job search. If you want to focus on a side hustle while you're doing your job search, you can maybe spend half the day reaching out to recruiters and the other half the day building those skills for your side hustle or for your career. There's so many ways of doing it in a cost efficient way. A gym membership isn't expensive, rather than, going on expensive trips and things like that. So you can maintain your health and do things like that in a very efficient way. So that's the reality of longer term unemployment. Some good points from her, some points I'd kind of disagree with her approach, but it'll help you out there because next year I'm sure many people will be dealing with some form of a layoff. I've worked in finance for over 10 years, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and many other companies. I offer career advice. There's a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. Let me know in the comments. I'm quite interested of what you think about her approach. I think some of you will agree she's a bit immature. Some of you will say she's probably just dealing with life as anyone in their mid-to-wood when they're dealing with toxic work environments. So interesting different perspectives. And 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.